Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for waiting till we got started. I just wanted to give everybody a couple of minutes to join. We're back. We're back with another webinar. This time, very crisp, very focused, and on a very pointed problem. I think we obsess too much over bringing the right people to the site and then, of course, making them buy. But I feel that we were not talking enough about keeping them on the site first, just letting them absorb the experience, the products, everything else that we have here with us. So I thought we'll spend some time on that. And what we have today, as I said, is a very focused few points that are going to make immediate impact on your traffic retention rate. So we're not going to get into the conversion rate today. We're going to find a way to make sure that you retain your traffic, right? So first 60 seconds, what does it take to keep people on the website? I'm going to jump right into it. If you have any questions as we go, please feel free to put that in the chat. There is also a Q&A section which you can use. If it is relevant to what I'm talking about, I'll obviously pick it up then and there. Otherwise, we'll take it up at the end. I'm also happy to take a look at your specific store. So if you have any store that you want us to take a look at, we could definitely do that as well separately. But yeah, we could jump into that. I'm just gonna quickly take care of this. Quick minute. All right, perfect. So I think what we all have to obviously agree on is attention spans are kind of dead. We were doing this quick analysis, and what we figured out was that you have about 3 seconds that humans are right now able to give you till the point, I mean, to allow you to hit peak novelty level of dopamine release. So it's un it's extremely unnatural and it's extremely impossible to do that in a shopping experience. So there's a very simple angle to a 2 second mind. I think that also applies to social media content and all other forms of content, not only shopping, which is that you generally have about 2 seconds to grab attention, which is why if you see for Instagram Reels, for social media, for TikTok, there's this concept of a hook, right? Which you try and kind of in 2 seconds try and get attention. And if you fail to do that, you're kind of done. I know this is not a world that we all probably agree with, but it is what it is. So you've got to evolve and you've got to learn and you've got to adapt. Now, what does that 2 second brain scan mean in the case of a shop? In the case of a shopper landing on your site, it really means very simply answering a few questions. What are you selling? Is it relevant to me? Can I trust you? And what should I do next? That's it. Just a simple 4 step check, right? The moment you look at a site, there are things your eyes can see and there are things that your mind can see. For things that your eyes can see, it's obvious, right? You're selling a bag or a jacket. Is it relevant to the person that's looking at it? If it is a man, are they did then end up landing on a site that only sells women's products, for example? So it's not relevant. They're gonna obviously hop off. Can they trust you? What's the first look and feel of your store like? It's like walking into one of those Japanese stores like Miniso or any of those deal stores versus walking into a Gucci experience center. So they're obviously very different feelings. They both inspire trust in a very different way. And you also know what to expect. You are expecting how much you might have to pay, what you might get for when you pay that, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, the next one is how, what should I do next? So uh, the thing is, as long as those four things are clear, I will continue. If they're not, there is a massive exit risk. And so if you only have a few seconds to kind of stop that from happening. Now, what I'm going to walk you through today is just 7 points, actually 6 points and a test. So we have a test or a checklist that we want you to run, and we can do it together at the end. Okay. So stick till the end because I think that's the most important one. But the important thing is we audit more than 1,000 websites every year. ConvertCard as a whole runs about 10,000 A/B testing experiments every year. So we have a mountain of data on what works and what doesn't work when it comes to conversion rate. And so I'm gonna try and share as much of that, but of course specific to what we're discussing today, which is the first 60 seconds, right? The first one that I want to talk about is default to deception, right? So what this really means is that currently modern day traffic does not arrive with neutral intent, right? So it comes with a lot of precognitive skepticism, right? So instead of now serving this word salad, I'll simplify it. They come thinking what's wrong here instead of what's right here, right? We are a high trust society. Most of the Western world is a high trust society. And so we inherently are people who want to trust, who want to believe, but that's slowly changing. We want to mistrust, we want to not believe. And the reason is because we've been scammed too many times, right? We are now not looking for reasons to buy, we're looking for reasons to leave subconsciously, because there's too many ads, there are too many alternatives, and there are too many reasons to not stick around on a store. So here is some ugly stuff that we've seen in our audit. Some of this might be shocking. The first thing that we've seen consistently not mattering is those standard three logos that you see here on the screen, which just are, we are done with this. Nobody cares about this anymore. More often than not, you will see this on the sites that should not be having it, and they take space and they might not actually achieve the goal that you want them to achieve, right? So these trust logos, these trust symbols, you have to do them in the right way. You cannot just go and implement absolutely anything. You have to be thoughtful, you have to be relevant to your ICP or your ideal customer profile, and that's when you might be able to make an impact. Now, it's also rooted in the fact that some of us might be trying to over reassure the customer, and so that's obviously a problem. The other thing is, of course, a leather boot store, for example, showing 542 people have bought this product, right now, or they're looking at it right now. I think a lot of that is not as a matter of fact, if I tell you, in EU, booking.com faced a lawsuit a couple of years ago, where they were showing, rooms left and nights left, and selling out fast kind of messaging on the site. And of course, EU being EU, somebody went on, sued them, and they essentially now have to show absolutely accurate information or not show anything at all. This also happens with flights in the EU. So when you are trying to book a flight in the EU, there's no nonsense rushing saying, hey, only one seat left or two seats left or any of that. So I'm just saying that if you want to do something like this, it has to be authentic, otherwise don't do it. And of course, timers are a double-edged sword. There is a right way to doing them, and there are 10 wrong ways of doing it. So if you have to implement a timer, if it's absolutely necessary, you have to be thoughtful about it. I know of stores today which if I open those stores right now, there's a timer running on them, and it's kind of the way that they do things. And so the customers, for them, that know that that's happening, they know that that's happening, but it just erodes trust like anything. So that's obviously not that great. One of the things that you could do is run a simple test after this webinar. I call it the template test. Very simple. Scroll to the bottom. If you see a powered by Shopify, a Gmail address on the site, any of those things, it obviously erodes trust. But also, in addition to that, count how many scrolls it takes for your website before the visitor, any new visitor, is seeing a product, a review, a call to action, and a trust signal. So those four things, you have to make sure that that appears before they scroll for the first time. We've seen this across multiple websites. Sometimes going in, this is one of the first problems we end up solving. And so it's extremely important that you look at this deeply. The other thing, of course, you can also look at 5-second test, right? Uh, Open your site in an incognito window and just let it sit. See what happens for the first 5 seconds. Does a pop-up come up? Are there carousels that are running? Is there something changing? And see what effect that could have, right? So if someone just bought this kind of messaging starts to pop up, obviously that also could erode trust, right? The next one I'm going to talk about is micro frictions, right? Death by a thousand cuts, as they say. But the important thing with this one is, normally we feel that bounce happens like this. Visitor lands, there's a big problem, and then the visitor leaves. But that's not true. It generally looks like this. The visitor lands, there are several tiny annoyances, and that's when the user actually leaves. What you really want to do is, if you have 100 attention points with your shoppers, you have to see where you lose those 100 points in a sequential way. So you have to start with, for example, the page loading slowly. So you lose 10 points there. If a pop-up comes up too soon in the journey, another 10 points lost. Is the navigation confusing? That happens too much a lot. And I'm going to give you an example of how navigation can be confusing. And it's a very obvious example. There are cases where I've seen that the navigation comes across as very obvious to the owner of the store or people who are optimizing it, but it's really confusing for the end customer, right? Product is not immediately visible. Shipping is unclear. Reviews are hard to point. So there are multiple reasons why your 100 points get lost and you're left with like 20, right? And so the next friction after you've lost that many points, the session ends, right? And so any extra clicks, etc., that you need, it's obviously a pain. Now, what we've seen throughout our audits is, for example, a supplement store. In this case, the example that I want to take is taking too long. So in this case, learn about magnesium. compare our formulas, take the quiz, read the science, meet the founder, right? All kinds of different messages, but they're not going back. So, the everything sounds reasonable here, but it's just that nothing really is getting me closer to buying the product or even experiencing it or even trying it. And so that's what we feel is not great. Or look at this one, for example, right? So I have shown this store in a previous webinar as well. But what's really happening here is we are asking people to do too much. Do you want to explore new arrivals or discover the collection or browse the bestsellers or shop the look or view the style guide or find your fit? What is it that you want me to do? Why are you making this an analysis paralysis kind of situation for me? So the founders, when we speak with them, what they think is that we are helping them. But actually, the shopper is thinking, why is it taking so long? What is the best product that I can buy on this site? Or what is it that they're good at? And does it make sense for me? Once again, the test that you can run for your store is a ghost interaction autoplay audit, right? So it's a very simple test that you can run, land on your homepage and count how many of the things on your screen move without you touching them. So any of those hovers, rotating banners, looping videos kind of stuff, right? If more than one element autoplays, you are visually blinding your customer. We've seen this across multiple heat maps. Once again, everything that we're talking about today has data behind it. We never ever would want to bring up something that does not have data. The other is the micro hover trapdoor audit. So, for example, a lot of cases, desktop sites are built for hover, and all of that works really well. But if you see and I've seen this annoyance in so many stores, is when you have a drop down in your menu, try and move diagonally from that drop down and you won't be able to go to the next button. That happens with Shopify more often than not. It also happens with some other template store setups, BigCommerce, for example. And so I think that's something that everybody needs to proactively solve for. The next one is the founder blind spot. Now I know we have some entrepreneurs with us today. I think a lot of you guys are actually store owners. So I don't mean offense in any way when I walk you through this, but the thing is that as an entrepreneur myself, I can tell you we are very passionate about what we do, right? And we want to passionately talk about what we do in the way that we want to talk about it. We are marketers, we thoughtful, but I think sometimes we take the brand vibe a little bit too seriously, and clear communication takes a backseat. So you want to try and solve for it. And generally, the layout that many founders love is something like this, right? So there's a large lifestyle image which is crafted for modern living. And then you go in and scroll, you see new arrivals, then you see bestsellers, right? Now, why this happens, of course, is that we're trying to, in some way or form, copy Apple or some of these other massive brands. But the thing is that people already trust Apple before they came, right? Minimal navigation is needed, very little social proof, large images, minimal copy. So we're trying to look premium, but as I said, clear communication is taking a backseat, right? Or we end up copying Allbirds, right? Clean layouts, minimal clutters. Allbirds is, by the way, fantastic brand. I think a large part of the reason they are successful is the fact that they communicated clearly. Their primary promise when they started out was comfort at a cost, and that's why people paid a small premium to buy those shoes. But the important thing here is minimizing clutter cannot come at the cost of bad communication. So when you look at audits that we've done, home pages that assumed too much did not work. So the modern collection built different, elevated essentials, all of that looked great, but it did not work well. Homepage bounce rate was bad, and homepage bounce rate is the worst because homepage is what gets you your direct traffic. All of your word of mouth traffic, people that saw an ad and Googled your brand and landed on the site, everybody who landed on your site from the link in your Instagram bio, all of that is direct traffic in some way or form, and that lands on your primary page. So if you're ignoring it, that's a mistake. I think we all know attribution in itself is a huge issue. But here are some tests that you can run right after we are done with the webinar. The first one is a blur test. Okay. Now, very simple. Take a screenshot of your homepage like you see here and look at the original homepage screenshot and of course the blurred person. So blur it to 50%. And then can you still identify what the company sell? In this case, for example, you can see household products, you can see a chair and all of that kind of stuff. Who it's for, right? And what makes it different. At a broad level, of course, the intention is not to make it obvious, but you should be at a broad level be able to say, hey, you know what, I think this is a furniture store that is running an offer, and they do these kind of deals, right? If all you can say that it looks premium, you've missed the point. So the communication has to be super, super easy. And of course, the next one is a stranger test. They've built entire products around this. User testing, for example, is one. We've also built a product now that automatically sends 250 people to your site and gets feedback from them to tell you exactly what they did not like about your site. We are launching it next week. So if you want to take a look at that, just let me know. But the thing is that with the stranger test, for example, of course, show your site to someone unfamiliar, but don't do the standard stuff. Hey, what do you think? Don't ask them broad questions, right? Ask them, what do you think makes this product worth paying for? Right? Make them validate the price for you. I know it'll be a little bit of a difficult journey with that, but because they'll say, "Hey, I don't think it's worth it." It's fine. That's exactly what you're after. If they answer, it looks nice, the branding seems maybe there's a vibe. But if they answer, the ingredients are better, I think you are using better materials, or the craftsmanship looks good, or it's handmade, or the results are great from the product, maybe it's a cosmetic product or health supplement, that's when you've actually done your job, right? Because even with premium healthcare products, so, cosmetics, all of that stuff, people know why they are paying a premium, right? Premium fashion as well, people know why they are paying a premium. They're paying, of course, for the brand, but they're also paying for handmade craftsmanship. It's made in Italy. It's the best quality leather that you can imagine. It's never been touched before. All of those things that come with buying extremely high quality products, right? The next, of course, is desktop brain on mobile screen. So this is, I think, a really obvious one, but I often see this getting missed, and I'm going to show you an image for why I see it getting missed, right? Very simply put, when we put together the homepage on mobile, um, the founder already knows the brand story, they know the quality and materials, all of those, right? So the inherent need is not to explain those things, right? So we try and make people feel things instead of outrightly solving for communicating them. And I know that outrightly communicating things is not what Simon Sinek, for example, teaches us. He says, hey, talk about why you exist and not what you do. And I agree with him. I really completely agree with him. I'm a huge fan. I've been looking at him for the longest time. But the important thing, however, is the shopper has no idea about the fact that you're ethically made or that you're handmade or any of those other things, right? So you have to find a way to communicate that. The second thing, of course, is a mobile screen has significantly lesser space, lesser patience, lesser attention, more distraction. So that makes it harder as a device to actually work on. And I often see that it's the theme's ability, the Shopify or whatever platform you're set up on, the ability of that theme to adapt to a mobile experience that you get handicapped by. So in a lot of cases, when we start with our customers, we focus on the mobile device because that's what drives majority of the traffic, and generally the conversion rate for mobile is half of what it is for desktop. So that's a clear handicap of the business. I mean, you're driving so much traffic to a device, but the conversion rate is half, and I think it cannot double, but you can definitely improve it. So the other thing that we've seen with auditing the store that we've seen is, of course, the product is, of course, hiding behind the brand story. So in this case, if you see, the hero image crafted for the modern woman, story about our founder, our mission is sustainability, press mention, and then the product. So, you take your time thinking that you're telling a story, but nobody really is going to invest the amount of time you want them to invest. And of course, cases where navigation is designed for hover, like in this case, if you see, when you hover on a menu, it gives you a drop down. But on mobile, it's generally a hamburger icon and it's hard to reach, right? So I want to, for example, talk about the one hand test. This is what a one-handed usage on a phone looks like. So if you see this heat map, open your website on the phone right now while I continue to talk and see how easy it is. And just hold it in one of your hands, any one of your hands, and see how easy. I preferably your primary hand, which is, could be right or left, but try and open the navigation, find a category, reach a product, and add to cart. And see if you're able to do it with one hand. Maybe on the 17 Pro, but definitely not 17 Pro Max. And same goes for large screen Android phones that are out there. And then, of course, tap products. So, from generally speaking, we have two metrics that we generally test. The first is taps to product, and the other is time to product. So, at an average, how much time does a user take to finally reach a product on the website? And the second is, of course, how many taps does a user take to finally reach a product on your website? So, best in class is generally 1 to 2 taps, which means you have high conviction messaging on the homepage or collections page. They are able to clearly see the images, they are convinced, they are curious, and they click and they go and see a product. Average is 3 to 4, problematic is 5 plus taps. So if you're taking too long to get to the product, that is obviously a big issue, right? The next one is again very interesting. Insiders only vocabulary. I want to say this in a funny way, but I think not using words people know does not make any sense, right? Um, I just want to, for example, talk about here, what works and what does not work. There are, for example, if you see this, uh, this is a furniture store. They're trying to sell a sofa, left facing or right facing, standard foam or plush foam, and so you can kind of understand what they're trying to do. Messaging goes sideways when you're trying to confuse the shopper, right? So RAF chase or LAF chase, for example, foam core or Dacron wrap, brushed ash. So we've seen this across a lot of clients. I'm showing you examples which are relevant. And what we've also seen is categorization that is extremely high level, right? Restore, renew, elevate, and balance. What does that mean? What problem does it solve for me? I know your products are great, and I know that this really large supermodel on Instagram sent me to your website, but how is restore different from renew? I mean, I'm sure those words mean different things, but how does your product make it different for me? Instead, why don't you ask them what their problem is? You have dry skin. Is there something else you're trying to solve for? And then narrow them down to a product that would make sense, right? The premium collection names that I sometimes see are shocking, right? So the Essentials, Edit, Modern Collection, Signature Range. They're sophisticated, they're fantastic, and I think they solve for branding, but I think it also takes away from telling the person what they're getting into. So there are two ways to solve it. If you want to create a collection, subtitle the collection, right? So a signature range are newest jackets, right? Just make it simple, or don't do it altogether. Try and keep it simple and easy to absorb, right? Product description that is written for industry insight. Now, I took the coffee example here, although I am a coffee guy. So, okay, I'll be honest. I understand what it means when it says medium body or a stone fruit finish or a delicate tannin. I know those things about coffee, but not everybody does, right? So, everybody else in my family, they generally know only a few things. Is it smooth? Is it strong? Right? They don't really evaluate coffee at that level. So when they have a sip, they're just generally thinking, is it bitter or is it not bitter? And what changes that, of course, is the roast of the coffee and where how what altitude it is from and so on. But so I'm just saying I'm somebody who can nerd out, but it's like an insider language. So it's important that you try, if your ICP is a sophisticated buyer who needs that kind of communication, by all means continue to do what you're doing. But if your ICP also contains someone who's not that sophisticated, don't overwhelm them such that they go and pick something simpler to understand. Even though the product might be inferior, but because it's easier to understand, they just keep biting, right? Mumbo jumbo product description. So this is, of course, the classic Amazon or AliExpress, ergonomic office chair, lumbar support, breathable mesh, computer desk chair, comfortable executive task chair for home office, right? So you got the biggest word salad of all time. Great for SEO, horrible for your eyes, and I think just yeah, kill it. Some tests you'd want. So now let's get into what you could do to solve for this. The first one, of course, is the vocabulary density test. There are brand created words that do not make any sense. Adaptive fit, precision formula, elevated living. All of those things are fantastic. What your customers want to understand is what benefit they create. For example, the adaptive fit, for example, could have meant great for white feet or something on those lines, right? So are they running shoes, coffee beans, protein powder, leather bags? What is it are we talking that we're talking about? So that's of course an important distinction. The last one, and then after that, we'll go to the stopwatch test, is over personalization aggression. Um, Admittedly, for the last 15 webinars, I've been talking about personalization and I have encouraged everybody to do it. But I feel that there is also a universe where people have taken it too far because it's so easy to install these widgets that show personalized recommendations that those recommendations have now stopped making sense. And so I think it's extremely important to solve that. So I want to put some emphasis on this one here. What are the signs of personalization regression? The first is, of course, homepage is looking different for everyone, but the performance is still the same. So conversion does not change. You've installed 20 apps, but it doesn't work, right? Product recommendations dominate the page. So if you look at the homepage for a site that has this problem, recommended product, bestsellers, recently viewed, more from your buying history, all of that stuff. So pop-up are trigger based, based on dozens of signal. So, I think I've already mentioned this pop-ups that are trying to be too pushy essentially, but while trying hard to be relevant. Every block contains urgency or social proof. I think you get the direction in which I'm trying to do. I want to give you an example. While auditing a jewelry brand, now jewelry brands have a very unique problem. Different if you are somebody who's running a jewelry brand, maybe you relate to this. But for brands that are doing jewelry, their problem is very unique, right? So the jewelry is a very desirable product. So traffic is very easy to drive. Ads that have rings or necklaces or any of that kind of stuff, expensive watches, Rolexes, in them get a lot of clicks because they create a lot of curiosity. The appeal is very high. So click through rate and all of those things are great. Conversion rate, however, are below 0.5%, right? So you're talking about 1 million visitors driving probably 5,000 orders. And so that's really a huge problem. Now, they make it worse. For example, in this case, the product page shows recently viewed items, product similar to this one, trending right now, and frequently bought together altogether, right? Then customers in your area also purchased and personalized recommend. So you're taking it too far, right? And now, of course, there was some more screen space. So what does the customer really want? They want some questions answered. Will this look good on me? How big is it? Can I finance it? Can I trust the quality? Is it worth the price? Those are the questions they want to probably get answers on. So again, choices are great. They feel awesome, but they might not necessarily be the right direction to kind of go in, right? Now, here is the stopwatch test. It's really simple. I'm going to run you through it. I think I'm going to gift you about 30, 40 minutes of your time, 20, 30 minutes of your time back. But let's quickly run through this, and I think I'll be able to probably add some value today. By the way, we do full-blown website audits. So if you want us to take a look at your store, audit it completely, threadbare analysis of exactly where you lose customers and revenue, we're more than happy to do that. And we'll jump on it. So just let us know. We're going to send you an email after this. If you're interested, just let us know and we'll get to work. Now, the stopwatch test is simple. At 3 seconds, the first thing is start your, of course, get into your site. At 3 seconds, can you answer these questions? What does the store sell? Who is it for? What should I click next? That's just 3 seconds. So it has to be by the clock, right? So that's the first thing. At 10 seconds, you should be able to answer why should I buy from this store? What product category is most relevant to me and can I trust you? At 10 seconds. It's a very short time window. I think the first 10 seconds of this call, you were listening to music. So clearly, I didn't do a good job, but at least I tried with a good track. At 30 seconds, you have to be able to answer reach. You have to make sure that I am able to reach a product page. I understand the price range and general, range in which I'm working with. And can I see some evidence that I'm not the only person on the world that is going to buy this product? So it could be reviews, it could be user generated content, images of people using your product. It could be your own social media feed. It could be anything. It could be anything that makes me feel like I'm not alone, right? And then, of course, at 60 seconds, find a product that I would consider buying, understand shipping expectations, understand that return is possible or not possible if it's the case, and feel confident enough to continue shopping, not check out. That's not the goal. The goal is to have them look at the brand so that the next time that they see you, they're like, okay, I remember these guys. They were pretty nice. I'm going to check them out again because you might have retargeted them with a different product with a higher conversion rate, right? The brutal test here, and it's important that as a founder, you kind of take a look at this. hand your homepage to someone unfamiliar and ask them these 5 questions. What does this company sell? Who is it for? What makes it different? Which product would you click on? What concerns would stop you from buying? Very simple 5 questions. It, I can tell you this looks simpler than it is. It looks very basic, but do it with someone who is your ICP, the age bracket, gender, location that is relevant to you. And it will change the way you look at your own site, because we have, we often see people who suffer from something called availability bias, meaning they've been looking at something for so long they can't now see it wrong in any way. They can't see what has to change. They can't see what's going wrong. So that's the stopwatch test. I'm going to send this document to you guys. Of course, you'll have it. That's everything that I wanted to cover today. I'm right here for any questions or thoughts you might have. If you have anything in specific you want to ask me or take a look at, I'm happy to do that. I'm going to stick around for another minute, and otherwise we'll just close it. Marlon will reach out to you, and just look for an email in the inbox from somebody on my team, and we'll put it together. Thanks for your message. We'll run the stopwatch test together on your side. So that'll be fun. Okay, perfect. All right. I will take no questions as a compliment. I think I was extremely clear in what I was explaining. Thank you so much for your time. I'm glad this made sense. I hope you were able to implement something straight away. And I hope you're not too hard on your marketing team, etc. But either way, that audit offer is open to everyone that attended today. Thank you so much. Have an amazing rest of your week, and I'll see you in the next one.